They posted about unconditional love. They asked for money for food. They cried on camera about how much they missed their baby. But authorities say the parents were not grieving. They were performing. And when the autopsy came back, it revealed something that turned this case from a tragedy into a murder investigation. This is the story of Kyla and Caleb Nix, and the 7-month-old daughter they are now accused of killing. In the rural town of Chapin, South Carolina, a young couple presented themselves to the world as the picture of a loving family. Kyla and Caleb Nix posted about their daughter, a 7-month-old girl they adored. They shared videos, photos with captions about unconditional love, and wrote about how much they missed her after she was gone. To anyone watching online, they were simply parents in mourning. But authorities in Richland County say there is much more to this story, more than what was posted on social media. On December 18, 2024, emergency crews arrived at a home to a baby who was unresponsive. First responders found Kyla and Caleb performing CPR on the little girl. She was rushed to the hospital, but that is where she passed away. From the very beginning, authorities found the death of Sage Willow Ann Nix to be suspicious. They launched an investigation, and on Valentine's Day, Kyla and Caleb Nix were arrested and charged with homicide by child abuse. The facts of this story are shocking. They are incredibly sad, and what authorities have uncovered about the weeks following Sage's death is deeply disturbing. It was December 18, 2024. The call came into emergency dispatch from a home in the rural area of Chapin, South Carolina. A 7-month-old baby, Sage Willow Ann Nix, was unresponsive. First responders arrived to find her parents, Kyla and Caleb Nix, performing CPR. They rushed the infant to a nearby hospital. Despite the desperate efforts to save her, Sage Willow Ann Nix passed away. She was just 7 months old, with her entire life ahead of her. But from the very first moments of the response, something seemed wrong to the officers on the scene. They did not treat this as a simple, tragic accident. The investigation into Sage's death was immediate and intense. The Richland County coroner, in a news conference, would later reveal the devastating cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head. But it was not just that. The coroner stated that the nature of the injuries indicated this was not an accident. It was intentional. The case was now a homicide investigation. But the arrests of Kyla and Caleb Nix were not made for nearly 2 months. Authorities needed time to build a case against Kyla and Caleb Nix, time to look through medical records, including pediatrician visits and trips to the emergency room. The Richland County coroner, in her public statements, remained tight-lipped, careful not to compromise the justice that was being sought for baby Sage. She stated that there were some things that looked suspicious to them and some things that they were able to question both of the parents about. But again, they did not want to do anything that would jeopardize the justice that would happen for this baby. As the investigation proceeded, a stark contrast began to form between what the medical evidence showed and what Kyla and Caleb were showing the world on social media. The parents were posting publicly as if they had lost a daughter to a freak accident. Kyla's Facebook page showed a link to a meal train for people to donate money for the couple to eat. She wrote that she and Caleb were broken and said that they were in need. "Food is good for the soul and belly," she wrote. "Please help us." At last check, nearly $400 had been donated to Kyla and Caleb Nix. In the weeks that followed, Kyla posted tributes to Sage. She shared videos of the baby with her father, Caleb. In one video, Caleb can be heard saying, "Sage, who am I?" And the baby responds with her version of Dada. Alongside the video, Kyla wrote that Dada was Sage's favorite word. She posted photos with the phrase unconditional love and harmony printed on them. To any observer, this was the tragic story of a perfect, loving family torn apart by a terrible loss. Kyla and Caleb were presenting themselves as parents in mourning, but the entire time, authorities were working behind the scenes, investigating the parents for the intentional murder of their daughter. The social media posts were not viewed as evidence of innocence. They were viewed as part of a pattern, a show. A forensic countermeasure is a term used when a person tries to hide or misdirect an investigation. In this case, authorities believed the public grieving was a strategic act. The social media activity of Kyla and Caleb Nix was now a part of the evidence. It was something the state would look at closely as they prepared their case. While the parents were posting about their need for food, the evidence was telling a different story. The cause of death was not a mystery. The question was why. To understand how this case moved from a suspicious death to a double arrest, we have to look at the work of the medical examiner. In cases of child death, the examination is thorough and every detail is scrutinized. A 7-month-old baby cannot walk. They cannot climb. They cannot do much of anything that would cause a life-ending injury by themselves. So, when an infant arrives with blunt force trauma to the head, investigators immediately ask questions. The story the parents tell has to match the physical reality of the child. When a person falls, they typically injure the prominent parts of their body, the elbows, the knees, the front of the face. These are called bony prominences. When injuries occur in places that are not consistent with a fall, suspicion grows. A fracture to the back of the head, for example, cannot be explained by a simple fall from a couch or a bed. One of the most telling signs is the type of fracture. When a person falls and hits their head, it often creates what is known as an eggshell fracture, a crack. But when a person is struck with an object, it can create a depressed fracture. The bone is pushed inward. This distinction is critical for a medical examiner. It tells the story of impact versus being hit. The Richland County coroner in this case determined Sage Willow Ann Nix's death was not from an impact, but from a blow. The investigation was not limited to just the head injury. A complete autopsy was performed. The medical team x-rayed the entire body to look for signs of previous injuries, of old fractures that had healed. They looked for other signs of trauma. They also conducted toxicology tests. The purpose of toxicology is to be thorough. An incomplete autopsy gives incomplete results. The team wanted to rule out every single possibility. The Richland County coroner noted that a significant portion of the investigation's timeline was consumed by reviewing past medical records, pediatrician visits, emergency room visits. The team was looking for a history. Was this an isolated incident, or was there a pattern of abuse involving Kyla and Caleb Nix? The arrest, which took 2 months, suggests the medical evidence and the historical records painted a comprehensive picture. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, Kyla and Caleb Nix were taken into custody. They were charged with homicide by child abuse. The charge indicates that the state believes the parents are directly responsible for the death of their daughter, Sage. Proving a murder case of this nature is a difficult task. There are no witnesses to the crime itself. The victim cannot speak. Therefore, the prosecution must build a case on circumstantial evidence. They must prove the intent of Kyla and Caleb Nix. Intent is the most difficult element to prove. In court, the prosecution will have to show that the injuries were not an accident, but that they were caused with malice. They will use the evidence of the injury itself. The force required to cause a depressed fracture is not accidental. It is the result of a specific action. The prosecution will also rely on the pattern of abuse. They will use the medical records the Richland County coroner mentioned. They will look at any prior visits to the emergency room. They will look at the course of conduct in the home. Cases like this rarely result from a single, isolated incident. There is almost always a history, a pattern of behavior that escalates until a tragic event occurs. And then there is the social media activity of Kyla and Caleb, the posts that were so public, the donations that were requested, the videos that seemed so loving. The defense may argue that the parents' grief was genuine. They may point to the public mourning of Kyla and Caleb Nix as proof of their innocence. They may say that parents who killed their child would not ask for help to pay for a meal. The prosecution will argue that the posts were a carefully constructed facade, an attempt to control the narrative and avoid suspicion. Kyla and Caleb Nix are behind bars awaiting bond hearings. The case is a tragedy of the highest order. A young girl, Sage Willow Ann Nix, just 7 months old, has lost her life, and the people who were supposed to protect her are now accused of taking it from her. The investigation into Sage's death was thorough, it was methodical, and it resulted in the arrest of both parents. The story of this case will continue to develop as the legal process unfolds. The evidence will be presented in a court of law. The truth of what happened to baby Sage will be determined. The Richland County coroner made it clear that this was not an easy determination. She stated that she was going to be absolutely certain before putting murder on a death certificate for Sage Willow Ann Nix. The case required patience. It required a complete review of every piece of evidence. The medical records, the toxicology reports, the x-rays, and the social media posts from Kyla and Caleb all had to be examined. The timeline from December to February represents the care that was taken to ensure justice. There was no rush to judgment. There was no assumption of guilt regarding Kyla or Caleb Nix. There was only the methodical pursuit of the truth. Baby Sage Willow Ann Nix deserved that much. She deserved a thorough investigation. She deserved to have her story told. The parents now face the consequences of the charges against them. The legal system will determine their fate. For now, they remain in custody. The community continues to mourn the loss of a child who had her entire life ahead of her.